She laughed. Right there at the table, surrounded by her friends in their polished heels and filtered lives, she laughed, loud enough for the next table to turn. Then came the words, clear as glass. He can't even afford dessert. I didn't flinch. Not because it didn't hurt. It did, but because something inside me went quiet, like the stillness right before a storm peels the sky in two. Let me back up. It was her friend Maya's birthday, a dinner she insisted I come to, even though she knew I'd been pulling extra hours to keep our business afloat. I ran a small design consultancy back then. Not glamorous, but honest work. She used to brag about my creativity. Used to. We were at this trendy new place downtown. Minimalist lighting, overpriced cocktails, the kind of spot where a salad costs more than my first car payment. Her friends loved it. I tolerated it. I'd been nursing a $14 ginger soda for over an hour, just trying to keep pace. When the server came by with the dessert menu, I politely declined. I had $27 in my checking account, and payday was 3 days out. That's when she said it. She didn't whisper it, either. She said it loud enough for her friend Erin to nearly choke on her Prosecco. She can't even afford dessert. One of them repeated, laughing. No, he can't, my wife said, pointing her chin toward me like I was a stray dog who'd followed her in from the street. I just sat there, face blank, heart sinking. The server, some young guy, barely older than my niece, froze awkwardly. He looked at me like he was waiting for a signal. I gave him a tight smile and waved him off. He nodded and retreated, probably used to scenes like this. They kept laughing. All of them. Except me. I kept my hands in my lap, fingers pressed against my thighs so I wouldn't do something stupid, like cry, or worse, speak. Because if I did, I wasn't sure what would come out. The silence between us on the ride home was thick enough to choke on. She didn't apologize. Didn't even acknowledge what she'd said. Just scrolled through her phone, occasionally giggling at memes and messages from the same friends who'd cackled at my expense an hour before. At one point she said, "Don't take it so seriously. It was a joke." A joke. Like our mortgage payments, or the 3 years I spent sleeping 4 hours a night trying to launch my own business, while she spent our savings on spa weekends and brand-name yoga pants. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. That night, I slept on the couch. Not because she asked me to, but because I couldn't lie next to someone who saw me as a punchline. It wasn't always like this. When we met, she used to draw hearts in my notebook margins and call me her dreamer. Said she admired my ambition, that she believed in what I was building. Back then, I was broke, but so was she. We made pasta out of boxes and laughed about how one day we'd own a place with real hardwood floors and a fridge that didn't hum like a dying raccoon. But something shifted when her job took off. She moved into marketing at a major tech company. Suddenly there were rooftop brunches, influencer friends, wine clubs. I was still in cargo pants trying to find freelance clients who didn't ghost after the first invoice. She stopped introducing me as my husband, the designer, and started calling me the creative type with a patronizing little smile. Looking back, I think she outgrew me. Or maybe she just thought she did. 2 weeks after the dessert comment, I walked past that same restaurant on my way to a client pitch. I paused outside. The name on the door, Elora, was hand-painted in cursive gold. I remembered that server's face, his nervous smile, the discomfort in his eyes when she laughed at me. It stuck with me. You ever have a moment where a seed gets planted in your brain? You don't even realize it until it starts to grow? That was the moment. I didn't walk in. I didn't do anything impulsive. But that night, I stayed up researching the place. Turns out it was part of a small local chain. 3 locations. Owned by a hospitality group that had just filed for Chapter 11. Opportunity. I'd sold a design system to a fintech startup the year before. They used my UX framework to secure a funding round. Quietly, they'd cut me in on a small equity deal. At the time, it didn't seem like much. Then they got acquired. I hadn't touched the money yet. Was saving it for something big. Back then, I thought that meant a house. Or maybe an office space of my own. Turns out it meant something else entirely. I called my lawyer the next morning. Can we acquire a hospitality asset under an LLC, anonymously? He paused. We can. What are you thinking? Just exploring, I said. I wasn't. I already knew. It took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of silent moves. My name never appeared on the paperwork. I used a shell corporation with a generic name, Alpine Trading Ventures. I hired a friend from college, someone with real estate experience, to manage negotiations. The group that owned the restaurant was desperate for a clean exit. We got it for 60 cents on the dollar. When the deal closed, I didn't celebrate. I didn't even tell anyone. I just sat in my office, staring at the official documents. The keys to the property came in a padded envelope. I held them in my hand like they were loaded. And then I waited for the perfect moment. It came faster than I expected. Maya's birthday, again. Same friend group, same restaurant, same server. When I walked in, nobody recognized me at first. It had been a year since the last Maya birthday dinner, the one where I became the evening's entertainment, the broke husband, the joke nobody could quite believe was real. I had changed since then. Trimmed the beard, swapped the flannels for tailored jackets. Carried myself differently. Not richer, just heavier, somehow. Like a man who had stopped apologizing for taking up space. I walked through the front door of Allura without a reservation. The host greeted me with the usual polished smile. Good evening. Do you have a... Before he could finish, the manager stepped out from behind the bar, caught sight of me, and froze. His name was Alex. Mid-30s, wiry frame, sharp jaw. He was the same waiter from last year. Her friend. I'd learned that 2 weeks after I bought the place. My operations team flagged him as close with former patron, frequently seated at her table. Her friend. Possibly more, if the way she laughed at his jokes meant anything. I'd watched security footage from that night. Yes, I had the cameras pulled. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to see it again. Not to feel hurt. To remember why I was doing this. Alex's smile faltered as he stepped toward me. Sir, can I help you? I leaned in. Tell them their guest of honor is here, I said, slipping 100 into his front pocket. His eyes narrowed. I didn't wait for permission. I walked toward the back, toward that table. Same candles, same chairs, same crowd. Maya, Aaron, Sasha, and yes, my wife. Or, more accurately now, my ex-wife. She was laughing before she saw me. Then, mid-sip, her glass froze. Her face drained of color. I pulled out the empty seat at the head of the table and sat down. Maya blinked. I didn't know you were coming. Neither did she, I said, nodding at my ex. She stared at me, mouth slightly open. I could see the questions trying to push their way past her lips. I didn't give them the chance. I raised my hand. From the kitchen, the staff emerged. 2 servers wheeled out a tray covered in silver domes, the kind they use for 5-star service. Behind them, the new head chef followed. She was a rising talent from Portland. I'd brought her in the week I took ownership. The table looked around in confusion as plates were placed in front of them. Rich, stunning desserts, gold-leafed and delicately arranged like art pieces. My ex-wife's eyes darted from face to face. Maya laughed nervously. Wait, what is this? I stood slowly. I believe, I said, someone once claimed I couldn't afford dessert. The room stilled. So, I continued, I bought the restaurant. Silence. No one moved. My ex let out a sharp breath, like she'd been slapped with the air itself. Aaron whispered, You're joking. I looked at her. Check the ownership records. Alpine Trading Ventures. That's me. I bought this place 6 months ago. A server gently placed the dessert in front of my ex. She didn't touch it. Her hands were trembling. That's when Alex appeared. He hovered by the bar, unsure whether to approach. My eyes met his. I raised a hand, beckoning him over. He walked slowly, cautious, like someone approaching a wild animal. Good to see you again, I said, loud enough for the table to hear. He nodded. I wasn't expecting. I know, I interrupted. You remember what you said last year? When you laughed with them? He shifted uncomfortably. It was a joke. Everyone was just having fun. Right, I said. And now I'm having mine. I turned to the room. This man, I gestured at him, laughed while serving me at this exact table. Laughed when my own wife humiliated me. Maybe that's not against company policy. But I'm not just a guest anymore. I stepped closer. I'm the owner. Alex opened his mouth. I didn't let him speak. You're fired. His face crumpled. You're serious? Dead silence. Clear out your locker. HR will send your check. He looked at my ex. She looked away. Then he looked at me. Not with anger, but with something more raw. Regret. He walked out. Not a single word. The room stayed quiet. My ex finally spoke, her voice thin. You did all this just to get back at me? I met her eyes. No. I did this to remind you, and myself, that what you laugh at today might own your future tomorrow. She reached across the table. We can talk. I pulled back. We already did. That night. You said everything I needed to hear." She looked like she might cry, but I wasn't there to catch her tears. I turned to the rest of the table. "Enjoy the desserts. They're on the house." And with that, I walked out, not with anger, not with swagger, just with peace. The kind that comes when you stop trying to be understood by people who were never listening in the first place. It wasn't the night that changed me. It was the silence that followed. You imagine a moment like that for so long. Not just the revenge, but the justice. The eyes that once looked down on you finally lifting, realizing they'd underestimated the wrong man. But the strangest thing? The high wears off fast. By the time I got home that night, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt finished. And that was enough. The next morning, she came by. I hadn't seen her outside of that restaurant in almost a year. But there she was, standing in the doorway of my new apartment, hair tied back. No makeup. The same college sweatshirt she used to wear when things between us were still real. "Can I come in?" she asked. I didn't answer right away, but I stepped aside. She looked around the space, clean, minimal, quiet. No photos on the wall. No clutter. Just sunlight pouring through tall windows and a record playing something soft in the background. "This place is nice," she said. I nodded. "It's peaceful." She sat on the edge of the couch, not quite sure if she belonged there. Probably because she didn't anymore. "I wasn't trying to humiliate you that night," she said finally. "I was just caught up. Everyone was joking." "And you laughed," I said. "At me." "I didn't mean to." "But you did," I interrupted. "Calm, not cruel. And what's worse, you never once apologized." She looked down, voice smaller. "You never said it hurt. Would it have mattered if I had?" I asked. Silence. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "These are the signed divorce papers." I didn't fight them. I didn't want to. I took it, flipped through the documents. Everything was in order. She stood to leave, but hesitated. "I miss the old version of us," she said, voice barely a whisper. That hit harder than I expected. "Me too," I said. "But that version died the moment you chose their laughter over my dignity." She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just looked at me like she didn't know who I was anymore. I almost said, "You don't either." But I didn't. She left without another word. After that, the text started. Not from her. From people I hadn't heard from in years. Friends of hers. Even her father, who once told me I was lucky to be married to a woman like her. They'd heard the story. Not just the restaurant, but the whole story. Somehow it had made the rounds. People talk. Especially when the quiet one finally makes noise. Some called me petty. Others called it poetic. I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't need their validation. This wasn't about revenge. It was about remembering who I was before I let someone else define my worth. 3 months later, Elora turned record profits. We rebranded, hired a new staff, overhauled the menu. The team I built made it one of the most talked about places in the city. Critics loved it. I stopped by every now and then, not to gloat, just to watch. Sometimes I'd sit in the back, unnoticed, sipping coffee while new couples laughed over desserts I made sure anyone could afford. And once, just once, I saw her there. Not at a table. At the bar. Alone. She didn't see me. She was staring at the dessert menu, the same one she mocked me over. Her eyes lingered on the words. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't order anything. She just paid for her drink, left a tip, and walked out. People always ask, "Would you do it again?" Not the restaurant part, the whole thing. Loving her, trusting her, losing myself. And my answer's always the same. Yes. Because sometimes it takes losing everything, your pride, your peace, even your place at the table, to realize you were never sitting at the right one to begin with. And when you finally build your own, you don't just serve dessert. You serve the truth. Quietly. With a silver spoon.